My name is Samuel Obriadria.
Hello? Okay, why? My wife comes and send a message you. Hello? What's happened?
It's a chance who be a quiet say what?
Besides, friend of friend, I'm so used to. My wife is not testing messages here. And our office so I'm trying to tell you, man. She says, I
mean, so we a guy manu and may young who could cry. And also wants a family drilling company limited for Kana.
What's it then? Family Drilling Company Limited.
Ye two borehole, biofuel, biogas, swimming pool, plumbing works in Danso, ye be Frey 0240 333 111 and now says 0244 144 822.
Me and Pan and you want swimming pool me see. Me want to me be family drilling now. Family drilling.
What fashion is
Me out that shit.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Good Morning Africa. Welcome to the News Review segment on Pan-African Television. My name is Kwame Owusu, so thank you very kindly for staying tuned into our station. Let me remind you that, when we start the News Review segment, you get the opportunity to share with us what your thoughts are via our WhatsApp and text number, which is 026 084 6539. We're also streaming live on Facebook and also on YouTube, youtube.com/Pan-African Television. You can also share with us what your thoughts are via Twitter and via our Instagram platforms as well. So this morning, these are the topics that we've tabled for our conversation. Tshisekedi supporters move to remove Kabila ally in DRC Senate. And I'm going to read that story out. Mutated UK variant of coronavirus now spreading like wildfire. Ghana Health Service warns. That's on the front page of the Insight newspaper. Supreme Court must revise its decision in dismissing application for original document. Professor Kweku Azan, Daily Post. Ken releases 1.2 billion for free water and electricity. This is on the front page of the Daybreak newspaper. So these are the topics that we've tabled for our conversation this morning. I've been joined in the studios by Edem Agbana, somebody I like so much, but I've not seen in a while. Edem, good morning.
Good morning.
I trust you are doing well.
Yes, God has been good to us.
Very, very well. And also Elvis Buta. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you too?
I'm well.
Condolences to Mr. Pratt and the family on the loss of his brother. May he rest in peace.
Right. And Mr. Pratt is also here. Good morning, sir. Yes, so let's start with the African story. Let me read a little bit of it. Tshisekedi supporters move to remove Kabila ally in DRC Senate. Prosecutors and senators in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, have reportedly launched new moves against the camp of former President Joseph Kabila just days after the removal of a prime minister loyal to him. More than 60 of the Senate's 100 members demanded the resignation of Kabila ally and upper house leader Alexis Thambwe Mwamba in a letter seen by Reuters news agency addressed to the office of the Senate and signed by Senator Valentin Gerengo. Tuesday's actions mark the latest move by allies of President Felix Tshisekedi to weaken his predecessor's lingering power. In recent months, Tshisekedi has chipped away at the influence of Kabila, with whom he had an awkward political alliance following a disputed 2018 election. A long-time opponent of Kabila, who governed from 2001 to 2019, Tshisekedi won office by beating Kabila's chosen successor in a vote observers said another opposition candidate had won. However, the new president had been forced to bargain over policies with Kabila, who maintained extensive control across state institutions and security services. Goes on and on and on. Elvis, let me start with you.
Yes, that's an interesting one. I'm not surprised at all. Because if you have followed the happenings in the Democratic Republic of Congo, you would realize that just a few weeks ago, even a leading prime minister was removed owing to his allegiance with, ex-president Kabila. It goes to the very bottom of the kind of turbulent political relationship that have existed between incumbent President Felix and ex-President Kabila's regime, where Felix undoubtedly have had issues with every single policy, be it political or social, emanating from the leadership or the camp of, Kabila. Of course, one would have expected that Kabila, who was seen as a very powerful man with excessive control over state, and of course the politics of DR Congo, would have survived his bid to get his successor elections from him. He had blessed a candidate in that elections, I think in 2018. But unfortunately, President Felix had the mandate of the people who said that no, enough is enough. Let us proceed to have a change, and that has happened. So I am seeing and viewing what is happening now as an aftermath of the subtle revolution used advisedly here, launched by today President Felix in taking over political mandate. And so the aftermath of this, an attempt to want to sanitize the entire political fabric and the social architecture of DRC to reflect the kind of governance and the philosophy of leadership, President Felix wants to peddle. And so this sanitization will include, sniffing for people who are major allies to former President Kabila, so that when you cut down on those people, you have cut down actually on the resources of Kabila. He becomes empty, he becomes weak, and going forward, he may not be able to what? He may not be able to cause the kind of, if you like it, political confusions he's noted for. So I think that these are the actual hidden, political basis for which we are witnessing what we are witnessing. But KOD, you then also realize that before one can successfully embark on such an operation, there must be factual basis upon which you'll be able to execute that. The man in question, who is a leading member in the upper house of their Senate, or if you like, their parliamentary system, in no doubt is one of the very closest confidant of ex-president, Kabila. But some time ago, I think some 6 years ago, he was accused of some embezzlement of money, about 2.4 million euros. About 2 million euros, mapping up to about $2.4 million. And of course, that, if verified to be the case, is criminal. I think that the letter that was presented, asking for the very relief they are asking for against him, did not state reasons why they want Mwamba removed. However, the prosecutors have given a lead that it had to do with this alleged $2.4 million, which they so believe he had a hand in embezzling. I want to call for justice that once these pointers have been raised, if there are bases to investigate same, they should. I don't see anything wrong with it because due process have been followed. Their very constitution, similar to ours, says that before you can prosecute or even arrest a senator of the upper house, you must be able to serve notice to the leadership of the house to grant latitude for you to be able to do so. That we are told have been done. I only pray that thus far, if we are able to comply with things like this, then they should proceed to prosecute in a law court of competent jurisdiction and allow the arms of justice, to wrap around the issue and to level it down on the basis of law. My only worry is knowing Kabila, undoubtedly he remains a formidable force. His place in the political history of DR Congo cannot be taken for a ride. His support base is still a huge following, considering the kind of history he has, the kind of allegiances people have for his father, you know, and the kind of political background he has. I only pray that this does not become one of those political issues that could further aggravate tensions, that would derail the peace and tranquility of other governance processes in DR Congo, especially looking at the time gap between just when one ally, the Prime Minister, was removed, and in just about 2 weeks, there is also an attempt to get Lumumba out. It calls for a lot of concerns, and I think that, yes, President Felix may be doing what he thinks philosophically is right, but an understanding of the security situation and the political tensions in the country calls for some form of decorum and strategic handling of issues such as this. So we will follow carefully. There isn't much to talk about now. We will follow and observe how things are going on in respect of this.
Very well. Adam.
Kodi, good morning to you and to our cherished viewers across the world. Happenings in DRC, I am not surprised. I've been following events in DRC for a while now, and I'm not surprised that the much anticipated divorce between the President Felix Tshisekedi's camp and that of his former rival Kabila is almost completed. For close to 20 months now, the DRC continues to see instability in terms of the political environment. That in 2018, after the election, when Felix Tshisekedi's party failed to get the parliamentary majority and decided to form that coalition, many pundits predicted that if the coalition succeeds, it was supposed to be the beginning of great things for the people of DRC, a country that is the largest in sub-Saharan Africa, a country that more than 70% of its population are still living in abject poverty of less than $1.9 a day. A country with huge potentials that from the 1990s till today not been able to recover fully from conflict and political instability. One would have thought that when you have these two camps coming together, we're going to see fight against corruption. We're going to see investment in developing human capital of the people of DRC. We're going to see investment to reduce poverty levels in DRC. But unfortunately, it was full of turf war and a fight to prove whose party or who had much more influence within the political space. So on the 6th of December, I recall that Felix Tshisekedi, the president, announced that the coalition will be collapsed, or they were opting out of the coalition. And since then, there have been a series of events. I am not surprised that as we speak, we even have members of parliament, about 400 or so members of parliament out of the over 500 members of parliament, voting out the speaker and agreeing that a pro-Felix Tshisekedi ally or speaker be elected so that the country will see some peaceful run. So KOD, I think that it's unfortunate that for the past 20 months, since 2018 that this coalition actually started, since 2019 that they started working after the 2018 elections.
Yeah.
It's sad, it's terrible that they could not work together to address the bread and butter issues, to address the security issues, to address the issues of unemployment and poverty that affected the people of DRC. But it appears that this new move to remove Kabila's people, Kabila's allies, from the strong institutions in DRC is a step in the right direction that is likely to give the government a free hand to be able to operate and implement its policies. But moving forward, there seems to be a challenge, a problem with leadership across the continent. Many of the countries, the issues that we experience are the same. Issues of corruption, issues of unemployment, issues of political instability, and issues of individuals who hold power, trying to use institutions of state to satisfy their individual whims and caprices. And that is happening even in Ghana today. That institutions that are supposed to be the bearers of our democratic fight or dispensation, that our fledgling democracy, the institutions that are supposed to help us build this democracy, are rather playing to some political games and gimmicks. And it is sad that even in Ghana, we experience same. It is happening across the continent. I think it is important for us as Pan-Africanists, as people who are passionate about Africa, to begin to look at ourselves and see that how best do we design our democracy, not necessarily copying from the West, because I dare say that even in these Western countries, many of them have even bigger issues with corruption, issues of the human rights abuse and all of that. They are actually the chief perpetrators of some of these things. But we must begin to look at the African solution to the African problems that we face. It should have been possible that for a country like DRC, irrespective of the camps and the rivalry that existed, when you form a union government, the government works solely in the interest of the people. So, KOD, the divorce is not a pleasant news, but if you follow events, you realize that maybe, just maybe, it may be a necessary step to put the government of Felix Tshisekedi in a better position to deliver on its mandate until the next election.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam Agbana. Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, I think the important thing to say is that neither Tshisekedi or Kabila has any workable solution to the problems of the Congo. And the problems of the Congo include the fact that Congo has enormous natural resources which are not owned by the Congolese people and are not exploited for the benefit of the Congolese people. Now, that situation has led to some stage where all the powerful elements in the imperialist world are competing for access to the resources and so on. And this has also led to a situation where various kinds of militia have been created and the Congo continues to be destabilized. I mean, the destabilization of the Congo, which started in the 1960s, has not been completed yet, and it is still there. Both Tshisekedi and Kabila represents two ends, or two sides of the same coin, which continues to facilitate the blatant exploitation of the resources of the Congo and the increasing poverty of the people of the Congo. Yes, there's a power struggle between Tshisekedi and Kabila, and that is to be understood. Indeed, you will not believe that after Kabila had lost elections, Kabila was still the occupant of the presidential palace, and Tshisekedi was staying in a government guest house. You understand? Kabila continued to control parliament, absolutely, because his party appeared to have a majority in parliament. Indeed, there was a situation where Kabila actually, went on his farm. And virtually everybody who mattered in government trooped to Kabila's farm to go and pay homage and so on. So you had a situation where Tshisekedi has been elected and yet Kabila continues to control the levers of power. And the recent moves initiated by Tshisekedi appear to be aimed at curbing the authority or the influence of Kabila within all government institutions, and so especially parliament, and to allow Tshisekedi, some breathing space. But Tshisekedi has done a number of things which are worrying already. I mean, on the international scene, for example, he has supported the United States of America, Donald Trump's position that Morocco still has sovereignty over Western Sahara. I mean, that's a crazy move. Tshisekedi appears to be even supporting the claim that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and so on. So it is clear that Tshisekedi is nothing more or less than a tool of U.S. imperialism. You understand? And he's beginning to assert himself. The moves he's making in parliament to enable him to secure some control of government institutions and so on. And the final analysis would not benefit the Congolese people. What the Congolese people need to do is to build new organizations and new institutions which will challenge the status quo and which will provide hope for the Congolese people. New institutions and organizations whose primary objective would be to ensure that the Congolese people take control of their resources and exploit these resources for their own benefit. Congo has to have a new dispensation in which Congolese determine their own destiny, and that their destiny is not shaped by either Donald Trump or Joe Biden or any other foreign power for that matter. That is the problem confronting the Congolese people today. I'm very confident that in all situations, justice will always prevail over injustice.
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely confident that in all situations, the masses and the aspirations will become the guiding post to the future of the Congo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. Well, so to those of you watching us out there, particularly those of you in Kenya, yesterday we received some calls from Kenya. So those of you watching us from Kenya, welcome. And you can join in the conversation with your messages via our WhatsApp number, which is +233 26084 6539. So you can share with us what your thoughts are. We're also streaming on our Facebook page, which is Pan African Television, and on YouTube as well. Let's come back to Ghana and discuss some disturbing stories here. Mutated UK variant of coronavirus now spreading like wildfire. Ghana Health Service is warning the good people of this nation. Adam, let me start with you.
Theodi, I think that the issue of the novel coronavirus, and how the new discovered variant seems to be spreading and ravaging the entire world is one that we must really, really pay key attention to. Admittedly, when the pandemic broke out, we started hearing about the number of people affected and the death just by seeing numbers. But now, almost all of us know someone or people who were close to us who lost their lives to the COVID. And so it's important for us to discuss issues around the COVID in a manner that is not partisan, but one that really, really educates our viewers about the dangers. Even though we are not supposed to do that in a partisan manner, it is also important to state that the government of the day has the mandate to ensure that our lives are protected, to ensure that because this is a public health issue, the right steps, the right mechanisms are put in place to ensure that Ghanaians or to curb further spread of the disease. KOD, after the lockdown in 2020, getting closer to the elections, the coronavirus never went away. But because the government, led by President Akufo-Addo, were the chief architects of gatherings where we were not observing the protocols. They stopped the daily updates, you recall. They stopped giving out the figures, and they created an impression that the COVID had gone away. So we saw rallies, we saw many events where people were not in mask. We saw how we all disrespected the COVID protocols. We were campaigning. In fact, we got to many rural communities where the people felt that COVID was actually a facade, that it never existed. Some actually thought COVID was only an excuse by the political class to carry out some assumed nefarious activities. So sometimes when you are from Accra, you are even in the mask. They tell you that here there's no COVID, so remove it, and they don't believe in it. And there are still people who don't believe in it. So now, we had a period, that period of laxity, where there was no respect for the protocols, no updates from the government on what was happening. The president turned his usual Sunday evening COVID-19, the supposed COVID-19 update, to political speeches. Sometimes after he's done with his speech, you see that throughout the paragraphs, he mentions COVID in just one or two. The rest was about what government was providing, things supposed to give him a political advantage. All these things contributed to people relaxing and people letting down their guard. Then right after elections, getting close to Christmas, we started hearing about the update, and government was now creating an impression that the COVID is back, kind of. As if during the period of the election, it was never there. And so people went ahead, they disrespected it, the Christmas parties, and all of these things. Then in January, we were hit with the figures as they kept rising. And today, we are at a point that almost all of us know a number of people who have died through this COVID. The point is that, one, we did a great disservice to ourselves and to the people of Ghana by that laxity, that period where we created an impression that the COVID was no more with us. So it is difficult to now make people believe that after you organize campaign rallies and after you disrespected the COVID protocols, now you come to us and tell us that wear your mask, observe social distancing, don't go to public functions, no marriage ceremonies and all of these things. People obviously will not trust these things. So the problem of enforcement is there. Secondly, I have also heard Mortuary Workers Association and other health professionals who believe that government is even underreporting the numbers. Now, when you don't give a true reflection, a true picture of what is happening, how will people respond to the urgency of this emergency? That you are not giving us a true picture, that people believe, experts, some health experts believe that government is actually massaging the figures. So when it comes to even the reporting of the figures, government is not being honest with the people of Ghana. KOD, quite apart from that, this government, again, ignored all calls for the price of testing to be, or the cost of testing to be reduced. I recall traveling recently, and when you are coming back, you ought to pay the $150 even before you be allowed to board from whichever country you are coming from. People were coming with families of 10 and all of these things. Even when we all know that that antigen test that was being administered was simply an exploitation, because when you compare with other countries that were even running the PCR test, which is even more effective than the antigen test, they were charging lesser amount. They continue with the exploitation. Now they've gathered enough money. I'm told this week they have reduced it to $50. When you go to Nyawo and all the other clinics where you are supposed to do the test, it's you pay the amount you pay is high. It's only recently, few days ago, that we are told that if you have some symptoms and you can prove, you go through some process and you get yourself tested for free. So at the point where we needed to reduce the test, at the time that we could have prevented the numbers from rising, so that people who felt symptoms could just with no money or with little money go to hospitals and get tested, then they can properly isolate themselves. We made it too expensive. It became a thing for the privileged people. So only a few could access these testing centers and actually go through the process. Another issue has to do with the irresponsibility of people who are expected to know better, especially in helping us fight the stigmatization. This morning on my way here, KOD,
yes, sir,
I was reading somewhere that the first deputy speaker, the Honorable Owusu, is complaining that there are members of parliament who tested positive, but they continue to report to parliament for their parliamentary duties. He was actually issuing out a stern warning to them that they should stop coming to the house. How irresponsible can we be that, like Carlos Ahinkra did, callously, prior to the election, he tested positive, registration was ongoing, he went to the center and still was monitoring and putting the lives of people at risk. The only punishment we gave him was to force him to resign. Apart from that, nothing happened. And we are being told that as we speak today, some members of parliament have tested positive and they continue to go to parliament. If they are going to the floor of parliament and the speaker or the leadership is aware and they continue to entertain them, and the only thing they are doing now is to issue a warning to them, you can imagine how these people over the weekend got to their constituencies. And if you know, typically, I have worked with a member of parliament for so many years. When the MPs go to their constituencies on weekends, they are like idols that the constituents worship. People come to them, gatherings, people invite them to all sorts of gatherings, and people go to them, people hug them, and because it is politics and you do not want to be seen as arrogant and you want to be the people's person, they hug all these people, shake hands, to show how humble or whatever that they are. So what it means is that you have members of parliament who have tested positive, supposed to use the opportunity to educate their constituents and say that this is just another kind of flu. Yes, obviously more deadly. But when you contract it, observe these protocols, do this, do that. They have disregarded this and put the life of many others, thousands, at risk by going to the floor of parliament and going about their normal duties because they are members of parliament. They are politicians. Carlos Ahinkra did. Nobody punished him, so it is okay for others to do it. Meanwhile, when you follow developments in other countries, KOD, prime ministers, presidents, top leaders who contracted the virus are quick to announce. Then they educate, they use the opportunity to educate, they self-isolate. And they educate the people that have contracted the coronavirus. This is what I'm doing about it. Doctors are taking care of, we are doing safe. What is so difficult about this? That in Ghana, you have politicians, you have members of parliament who have tested positive and they are still going to parliament and going about their normal duties and putting the lives of others at risk. And the only thing we can do about it is to issue warning, the speaker saying that we know you have COVID and you have come, you are still here with us and all of that. It is the height of irresponsibility. I think it is important that before end of today, these members of parliament are announced, they take time to self-isolate, and they will get back to the house only after they test negative, so that we can even fight effectively the stigmatization.
Right.
We will implore on government to be honest in their reporting and ensure that the PPEs that they always mention the huge figures they talk about. The president is always talking about items they are supplying, how they are providing PPEs. But when you go to the grounds, many of the hospitals, our health workers are complaining that these PPEs are not available. I think we can do a little more better in managing this pandemic than we are doing now. And it's all of us our responsibility. But government has the chief responsibility to ensure that our lives are protected, because KOD, this is a public health emergency.
Thank you very much. Certainly, this is a public health emergency. Elvis, let's come to you, sir.
By the accident at Owusu Road.
Oh yeah.
Then we can
is it the Bupe one?
Yeah. But coming back to COVID, it remains a bitter pill pushed down our throats by nature. We cannot blame any particular individual, source or authority for COVID-19. We only have ourselves to blame if we are unable to do what we must responsibly do. One, as a people. Two, as a government. Three, as a nation, to be able to protect ourselves, protect our nation, and to protect the future. Clearly, the particular issue of the new variant, which for me should not be treated in isolation from the earlier experience we had. Kyo, do you know I am one person who likes to peddle the path of objectivity?
20.
And so in so doing, I wouldn't want to trivialize this to a political matter. But the truth of the matter is that COVID has become even more worse now than before. Talking about the new variant, which scientists describe as B1.1.7, we are told is of more, or larger number of mutations than the initial variant or the initial, virus we had. That was quite pervasive. Even that, considering the mutations of the new variant, that then makes it more easily to spread. And the danger of this new variant is that in most of the circumstances, it does not aggravate worsening health situations.
Friday.
The symptoms, the signs, as we see in the earlier interface, where there are dry coughs and temperature and fever, do not necessarily manifest in this particular variant. That makes it even more dangerous. That makes it even more perilous and deadly than the initial one. And that tells us that we must increase and double our watch on sale. The initial one, we were told that owing to the humidity we have as a tropical nation, we are likely not going to be much affected. But trust me, especially so in even the case of children or people with the underlying causes. Today, the new variant seems to me as though it is even a no respecter of underlying causes. Just yesterday, or a day or two ago, at the Tamale Teaching Hospital, we are told that an 8-month-old baby, that's less than 1 year, 8-month-old baby, at the Tamale Teaching Hospital actually tested positive for COVID-19. In fact, the new variant, COVID-19. KOD, it is heartbreaking. 8-month-old baby. Now, that was detected because such a baby was at the hospital. What about the vast majority of these babies? The vast majority of these people who are found in communities where they do not even have primary health care at their disposal to be able to notice some of these things. What happens to the many people who are not privileged enough to undergo a COVID test? Ignorant of the fact that they are carrying the virus, it then comes as a danger to the many activities they engage in daily. even in the advanced economies, where we have all the monies, where we have all the scientific approaches, the new variant is causing more harm than it is even doing in Ghana, than it is doing in Africa. So clearly, in my language, they say that there is a proverb that says, if fresh, vegetations, fresh trees are burning down to ashes, who talks more about the dry ones? It means with the blink of the eye, they will flame away. They will flame away. So if the advanced economies are struggling to arrest the new variant, London, England, the UK in general, is in the news for bearing the triumph, the golden cup of the ladder, of the bars, of the graph, UK of all places. So it tells us that the responsibility goes beyond the economic power. It is a new non-military war faced by the international community. And our international political order, including our scientific machinery, still do not have basis for a clearer understanding of the picture drawn by COVID-19. We are warned by scientists that a new variant will actually come. A third phase of it will blow, most likely. These are things we should stop the politicization of COVID and blaming ourselves and everybody, and move on to action. Engage all necessary scientific entities that can do something about this. The sanitizers we are talking about as part of PPEs. New research findings are actually indicating that the sanitizer may not be as effective as we initially glorified it. We are told that hydrogen peroxide now does better, especially for this new variant.
Yeah.
Hydrogen peroxide. Yeah. So there are deeper issues that are required than blaming political systems and governments. Because in the scientific arena, there are a lot of lapses and unending revelations about the trick nature of the virus. I agree with him when he said campaigns and what have you. Fortunately, in this country, not one political party did campaigns. Not one political party did rallies. Fortunately, for that argument which I support. I was parliamentary candidate in the north. AOD, you had opposition parties telling communities that, oh, COVID is not real. It was just brought as a prank for government to be able to raise money.
Who said that? Who would ever say that?
Do your checks, you're a media house.
No, but you are the one making that.
I can give you pointers to go and investigate.
You can mention the person's name.
Including people who are now occupying very leading positions in this country. Very leading positions.
As belonging to the party in power or as belonging to the opposition party?
It cuts across. I am telling you that rallies were not held by one particular party.
Absolutely, yeah.
So those arguments, COVID is there, COVID is not there, it's a prank to raise money. No, it's not a prank to raise money. It was there, but we have fought it, it has gone. Those are the impressions. I mean, let's be objective on critical national issues such as COVID, because people have lost lives. Loved ones have lost lives. We've got how many people have lost loved ones in the NDC to COVID, and I'm hurt. People in NDC have lost loved ones in the NPP to COVID, and they are hurt. If they have the way of bringing them back, they will. Collective approach to responsibility, rising from the individual to institutions of state and to government, will be what will support the fight against COVID. Frivolous politicization of COVID will not lead any African country anywhere. But if you look at the conversation since COVID started till date, in the specific case of Africa, We have politicized it, where opposition parties think that it is a playground to bedevil government. Meanwhile, the thing is killing everybody. It is not a respect of the political paraphernalia you are wearing. Today, what we are hearing from Parliament, I'm not sure Parliament is made up of only NDC or only NPP. In fact, we have an equal Parliament now, so to say. We are not privy to the names of those who have tested positive. But two things. What Adam didn't say, apart from the fact that people have tested positive yet attend Parliament, that I didn't hear. What I know is that some tests were conducted, and after some parliamentarians tested positive, most of the others, and look at how dangerous that is than what Adam said, most of the others are now refusing to even avail themselves for the test. You understand? So the confidence to know whether you even have it or not is not there. So if you have it, at the end of the day, you go and you spread it to the rest. They come, we go for lunch together, and after that they run to the constituencies over the weekends and spread it. That is even the source of my worry, because in Accra, if you are diagnosed and you are lucky, you may be able to have health assistance. But when you go to the villages and you infect people with it, these people are dying daily, and some old men and old women are being blamed for killing them. Because this new variant has a propensity to just let a strong person collapse immediately. You start bleeding from the nose, you know. In most of the instances, before they diagnose it is COVID, you are dead. We have turned nose and mouth mask to chin masks. Others, it has become forehead masks. We can't blame only government.
Yeah.
Government is blamable. Government has a responsibility. I agree. But individuals also do. It's a collective responsibility. You hang your mask on your forehead as you would raise your spectacles. Then at the end of the day, it becomes a blame. Now, to critical health entities, we know there are still lapses in the PPEs. Because now the way the thing is, you can't even tell exactly how to apply the PPEs alone to combat it. Sometimes I'm tempted to believe that if rigorous scientific scrutiny, clinical trials are made, we will realize that there is, no matter how insignificant it will be, but there is a gap out there for this variant to be airborne in a way, depending on your proximity with a person having it. I'm suspecting that this virus can survive in the air for a while. If not, look at the class of people who are even dying. Doctors, we can understand their exposure. Bankers, bank managers, top CEOs. It was the best point, savings and loans CEO a few days last week. Prudential Bank have lost, I think, a very critical official. I saw the woman's picture flying on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, why? So, KOD,
Yeah.
clearly, because it is with less symptoms, I think that it calls for a lot more consensus, and that is why I have my issue with the reopening of schools.
Yeah.
I think it has to be reconsidered. Look, at the University of Ghana, they have made studies completely online. Even though students have resumed and they are on campus. But they are staying in the hostels, is not online. You know, in the night, in particular, when you see these students, yesterday as late as around 11 p.m., I was still on campus. By the way, I'm a student myself. So don't ask what I was doing there. I was going to study.
Why?
Even me, I was at the started. You understand? I know what you can do. The manner in which students move in groups, the conversations they have, the way they play, clearly it tells you that even at that height of education, people are not bothered.
Yeah, that's a danger.
So I
Right.
think that we need to look at COVID again, and if possible, we need to close. So now that 8-month-old babies can be diagnosed.
Yeah.
Those in the nursery, those in the cages who do not have the sense to know between right and wrong.
Yeah.
What to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
What are we exposing
Yeah.
them to?
Right. You're still watching the
I
yeah.
think we have to consider it from those bases, and then come up with a more decent, responsible, nationalistic approach again to the issue.
You spoke about collectivism, but don't also forget that I think the NDC created COVID-19 support team for the purposes of aiding the government. What did government do? Government did nothing about it. And so if you're talking about all of us coming together to deal with the situation, you should know that somebody also offered to support. You failed to do that.
From the outset that I want to be less political on this.
No, you're not. Yeah,
the committee that was set, tell me one instance they've advanced any particular discussion with government. They were doing their own thing.
They did.
No, at what point?
They did. We
am not
had
privy.
KOD.
Can I establish?
No, but because you raised a very important.
I will get you to respond to that briefly before I come to Mr.
I have not at any point see them extend invitation to government that let us sit together. They may bring their suggestions, they may express their opinion. It hasn't happened at the instance of the minister, it hasn't happened at the instance of the presidency.
Adam, respond to that quickly and then come to
the NDC's COVID-19 response team presented three different position papers to the government when the COVID, when the team was formed, three different responses. After the third one was when President Akufo-Addo invited leaders of political parties, if you recall that meeting. I do recall, yeah. Where even in the presentation by our national chairman, the Honorable Dr. Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, he stated that much of what he was talking about is already contained in the position paper and the proposal submitted to the government's team, COVID-19 team, by our response team.
Yeah. I do recall that. So I'm surprised I haven't seen it. But anyways, let's leave it. I'll come back to you again.
That was at the invitation of the president.
With the grace of respect. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you.
For me was a useless
all right.
team.
It's not.
We presented an antagonistic pressure group.
I see.
You do propaganda with COVID.
And then you talk about collectivism. You talk about
when we presented three position papers.
Thank you very much.
Understand?
Thank you. Well, interesting. Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, this morning, I know that the Socialist Forum of Ghana is starting a Twitter storm to mobilize, to put pressure on the government to close down the schools. The Socialist Forum of Ghana has initiated this measure in the light of the data that is available to us and in the light of also what the science is saying about the COVID-19 infection rate and so on. Now, as was stated by Elvis, if you go to the University of Ghana now, most of the courses are being run online. Most of the courses are being run online. Now, if the courses are being run online, why then do we open the schools and virtually compel students to congregate on the campuses? It doesn't make sense. Because they're running the courses online. Why do the students have to be in school to be able to run courses online and so on? It simply doesn't make sense. I know a couple of students who have decided that they are not going to go to the campus. They'll stay at home and continue with their lessons online. So this whole thing about reopening schools is to give the false impression of normalization when we know that the situation is very, very grim. You see, until recently, very few regions in Ghana had been affected by the spread of COVID-19. As of now, all 16 regions in Ghana have reported cases, and we should be alarmed. All 16 have reported cases. There is a testing center somewhere in East Legon, and I've checked. That testing center tests about 700 cases a day. Every day, they are recording an average of 70 cases in one testing center at East Legon. Every day, 70 cases. Now, before we get into a day, before we get into believing that it's an Accra phenomenon and so on, we should be careful. Yesterday, I was speaking with a friend of mine who has 3 domestic workers. One of them traveled up north, to the Upper East region and came back. And he decided that, look, they have to test for COVID before he resumes his duties fully. It was positive.
Wow.
Another domestic worker who comes from a village in the Ashanti region also tested positive. We are talking about one house. Then a third domestic worker who comes from Mankesim also tested positive. This is 3 in 3, 100%. I mean, I'm really frightened by what is happening. Only yesterday, we buried my junior brother. And you see, for me, that's an eye-opener. There's a gentleman who doesn't smoke, who doesn't take alcohol, who is very, very, very careful. He hardly moves. When he moves, he's going to church, or he's going to a Bible Society meeting, or he's going to the campus to lecture. Very private person, who took all the protocols so seriously, and so on. We buried him yesterday. You put that aside. I mean, since school reopened, some of the schools themselves have decided to close down because of the rise in infection on campuses. There's one school that I'm not going to mention where one teacher has died and a number of teachers have also been infected. The school on its own has decided to close down. You understand? Now, I am very, very deeply worried about the COVID situation because before, we could only hear the statistics.
Yeah.
A certain number of people and so on.
Now you're seeing it.
Now, we are not just seeing, on a daily basis, you can count friends, acquaintances, co-workers, and persons you know who are dying on a daily basis. I mean, last week, there was one day in which I knew 5 people who died from COVID. I know them in one day. 5 people that I know who are friends of mine died from COVID. Now, we've been given some statistics, and there's something interesting. I had an interview which was granted by a representative of the Ghana Medical Association on radio. And he said that they were told not to count deaths of COVID-infected persons who had underlying conditions. And that those deaths were to be attributed to the underlying conditions rather than COVID-19.
Madness.
And I was so shocked and scandalized. It's like you have a heart condition. You jump into a car, from Pan-African television, and at the traffic light, you crash into the traffic light and you die. And we are being told that the death should not be, attributed or assigned to the accident, but to the heart condition. It simply doesn't make sense. And this situation leads to undercounting undercounting, okay? Now, we also have had a situation where we virtually halted contact tracing. We've halted contact tracing. Now, if you halt contact tracing and you are releasing figures, what do those figures mean? Those figures are useless. Because we have not put in place measures which will enable us to determine the full extent of the infection. We have never done random mass testing. We have never done it. So if you are not doing random mass testing, how do you know the full extent of the disease? How do you know the full extent of the disease? You understand? So look, let's stop deceiving ourselves. Let's take measures which would enable us to determine the full extent of infection, and let's be sensible about it. I've heard all kinds of theories, and some of them are extremely foolish theories. You know, extremely foolish theories. One of the things we know about this disease, and the president has repeated them several times, is the fact that if you don't move, the disease doesn't move. If you don't congregate, the disease doesn't get spread, and so on. This is basic. Now, there are some people who are telling us that the closure of schools would actually disadvantage people in poor communities and in rural areas and so on, and that we know that the spread of the virus in the schools is not that much and so on. What rubbish! I mean, absolutely nonsensical. What? When you open schools, people will congregate. If they congregate and you have one infection, it can spread. When you open school, people move. There's movement, and movement carries the disease and so on. You understand? So all those childish and foolish theories and so on, let's pack them, as they say, one side, and begin to look at the thing from a realistic point of view. You understand? Look, me sitting here, I mean, frankly speaking, I don't care if I die today or tomorrow and so on. It doesn't make any difference. The world will go on. You understand? I mean, I've lived enough years, you know, and I really don't care, and I mean it. You understand? But I'm scared today. I'm not scared because of the possibility that I will die. That's not what scares me. I'm not scared. I'm scared because I have children and I have grandchildren. You understand? If I get it, I would infect my grandchild. That's what scares me. You understand? If I get it, I would infect my children. If I get it, I will infect the people I work with. If I get it, the Socialist Front of Ghana is in trouble. Because people in the organization will get it. You understand? That is my worry. It's not because of me whether I will die or live. But if I have it, Kwame, you may get it. You will get it. You may get it. That's my worry. That's my fear. You understand? I have so many relatives and friends that I've not been able to visit for 1 year. Because I cannot bear the thought that I got it, visited them, gave it to them, and they died. It will hang on my conscience forever. This is what is frightening me. This is what is scaring me. Not because I will die. Who won't die? And if I die, what happens? Nothing. You understand? But I'm so scared. So scared that I will become an agent of death. I don't want to become an agent of death. You understand? Mm-hmm. And whether we like it or not, the continued spread of COVID-19 will have consequences for all aspects of our lives. It will have consequences for the national economy. It will have consequences for infrastructural development. It will have consequences for everything and anything. And that is why we have to be sensible about it. And that is why we need to take steps, proper, concrete steps based on science to get there. Look, in some of the hospitals, they've run out of oxygen. Last week, a friend of mine lost his brother-in-law because they had lost, there was no oxygen. Oxygen was not available in our hospitals. Look at what we spend national resources on. Look at what we spend national resources on. How much does it take to provide oxygen tanks? How much does it take? And I am ashamed. I'm completely ashamed. A number of countries in Asia have managed to develop the COVID vaccine. A number of countries in Latin America have managed to develop the COVID vaccine. In fact, Cuba today is developing the cheapest vaccine in the world. I was listening to an interview again granted by a representative of the Ghana Medical Association and somebody in the presidential team. And they were talking about how powerful Britain is likely to become and how we may become beholden to Britain because Britain has developed the cheapest vaccine. I said, the people, they are not even reading. You understand? They are sitting there advising government with empty heads. They don't even know that the cheapest vaccine has not been developed by Britain but by Cuba. You understand? So we are rushing to Britain for help, when indeed what you should do be talking to Havana. Yeah. You understand? Which is not a colonial power, which is not an imperialist power, which is not going to use COVID vaccines to enslave you and so on. And these are the advisors we have. Well, what do we expect? You understand? But I was saying that some countries in Asia have managed to develop a vaccine. Some countries in Europe have managed to develop vaccines. Some countries in Latin America and so on. What is happening to Africa? Our scientists, who is going to wake them up from their sleep? Maybe they are not asleep. Maybe the resources which ought to be made available to them are simply not there. You understand? Kwame, when this pandemic started, I made a statement. And I'm coming back to that statement again. I made a statement, clear statement, that if the numbers should increase to a certain level, our health personnel are going to have to play God. They are going to have to decide who goes on the ventilator and who doesn't go on the ventilator. Who should have oxygen and who should not have oxygen. Who should have access to a hospital bed and who should not have access to a hospital bed. And I made the point that if there was only one bed available, and God forbid, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia gets COVID and is in a critical condition, and me, I get COVID and I'm in a critical condition, the nurses will choose him to occupy the only bed available. They will put him on the last ventilator. In fact, in some instances, they may even remove a ventilator from somebody and put it on him, and so on. And I posed the question, so when we get to that critical stage, what is going to happen to the underprivileged from Shukura, the underprivileged from Nima, the underprivileged from Mamobi, the taxi driver, the truck driver, the watches seller by the street and so on? We would impose a sentence on death on them. And there will be no rescue. They will be sentenced to death and they will be killed. Kwame, we have arrived at that situation. Today, we are in that situation. I said this a year ago Within 12 months, we have arrived at that situation. Why? Hasn't the Ghana Medical Association told us that the hospitals are full? Hasn't the Ghana Medical Association told us that the hospitals are full? So if the hospitals are full, and you, the taxi driver in Mamobi, you get COVID, would you be admitted into the hospital? What chance do you have? Last week, a very prominent friend of mine, and he's not an ordinary person, big man, his uncle had COVID. Did everything to find a bed for the uncle, couldn't. Was told that there is a waiting list. So the uncle has to be on the waiting list.
Wow.
This gentleman then said, look, he's ready to pay any amount. He went to Nyaho Clinic, it was full. Full. So even with his money, he couldn't get a bed in Nyaho Clinic. Then, and this story I'm telling can be verified, and then this gentleman thought that Dr. Nyaho Tamakro, because of his name and so on, may have some influence in Nyaho Clinic. So he called Dr. Nyaho Tamakro and said, please, I'm ready to pay any amount. Just get me a bed in Nyaho Clinic. They couldn't find him a bed in Nyaho Clinic. And I don't want to tell the concluding part of the story. So this is the situation in which we are. If you are not a powerful, influential person, even your money cannot get you a hospital bed. You will die. That's how bad the situation is. All of us remember the University of Ghana Medical School, which became an issue, ping pong, whether who built it and who concluded it and so on. All the rubbish of our University of Ghana Medical Hospital. Today, the University of Ghana Medical Hospital has become the #1 savior. I would like to know who and who are in the University of Ghana Medical Hospital. It will be very revealing. You understand? Because I know that if you go to the University of Ghana Medical Hospital, you won't find the Kinky sellers and the Wache sellers there. So who and who have filled the University of Ghana Medical Hospital? Who have filled them? And then we are talking and then they come and tell us that, oh, we are going to build how many hospitals in 1 year and so on. And I know as a fact that the renovation of the police hospital in Accra has taken 17 years. We haven't finished. We are not building a hospital. We are renovating the police hospital in Accra. 17 years we've not been able to finish renovation. Now, if for 17 years you cannot finish renovation of hospital, how long will it take you to build 38 hospitals? So stop deceiving us. I do hope that now we all know and realize that there was a lot of sense in those who told us to stop this whole foolish project of a national cathedral and use the resources for something more beneficial and more sensible. National cathedral. What is it going to do for us in the face of COVID-19? The bishops and archbishops themselves, they are wearing double masks. The people who pray for us, who are going to pray in the cathedral, they themselves are so scared of COVID-19 that they are wearing double and triple masks. I made a promise to God and so on. If you make a promise to God, go and fulfill it with your own pocket money. Don't use the resources of the poor, innocent taxpayer. Do something which is relevant to maintaining life and public safety. Not a cathedral. Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. This message is from Gabriela Tete, who's watching us this morning. It says, my contribution, KOD, we need to improve on education and enforcement of the protocols. That remains our safest bet for now. It will take some months to vaccinate, I beg your pardon, 90% of the population, as the president assured. I know the AU has procured about 600 million vaccines, which government believes will take custody of soon. Instead of sending military to do the bodyguard duties now, they and the police should hit the street and make people wear their masks properly. Yesterday, I drove through Accra, and the masks, as Elvis said, were worn as chin masks. Others had the masks in their hand and walking around with it. 100 people dead in a month is not something to joke with. This one is from Gabriela Tete. You wanted to, Adam, did you want to make a submission? No? Yes? Okay. So, last topic, dispatch it quickly and we'll get out of here. Supreme Court must revise its decision in dismissing application for original documents. This one is from Kweku Azar. Adam, let me start with you. Yes, my boss.
The happenings in the Supreme Court and commentary outside the Supreme Court, we all ought to be a bit careful.
Absolutely.
Because you know for a fact that the Supreme Court, the apex court, has the power to summon us at any point, any time that they feel we have said or we say anything that has a bearing on the case in the name of contempt. But I believe the fact that the Supreme Court can exercise its power and invite people for contempt does not mean that even when we see and we can observe clearly certain strange happenings in the court, we should be prevented from making comments on it. So I'll proceed to comment based on that principle. KOD, on the 13th of December, when the Electoral Commissioner or the Electoral Commission released a press statement to correct in that statement some perceptions or to inform the people of Ghana about some rumors that the data and documents used in the election were being collected and some of the data being deleted and all of that. They assured the people of Ghana in that press statement that pink sheets and data on the elections are for the public consumption. So at any point in time, when the public demands any of that data or information, they were going to release it. Apart from that, what is so secretive about pink sheets, about constituency collation summary sheets, results, about regional collation sheets, such that when a party in an election petition case, in this matter, the petitioner demands the original documents just to compare and verify that indeed these are the sheets that form the foundation, the basis for your declaration, and the Supreme Court will not grant it. I was surprised. Surprised because what is so secretive about the EC document? Because in any case, all the political parties as stakeholders in the elections were given copies, okay, copies of those documents. Now you have the petitioner demanding that we have copies of the documents based on which we wrote our petition and we are challenging the validity of the results in court. However, grant us the opportunity to verify and inspect the original documents, just so we know and ascertain for ourselves whether or not the case on which we are proceeding in court, the documents are the same. What is so secretive about this that the Supreme Court decided to dismiss this application as well? Now, we have right to information law. I know how difficult it has been, especially for those of you in the media, to have government institutions to properly comply. I recall prior to the elections, the MP for Ashaman, the Honorable Ernest Nogbe, actually went to court, wrote to the Electoral Commission first, demanding to know details of some procurement that went on at the EC. They refused to furnish him with the details. He proceeded to court. Even when the court ordered for the information to be given to him, the Electoral Commission still insisted and refused, flouted the court orders. So today we are in the Supreme Court. The petitioners made a simple application to inspect original documents of the Electoral Commission, documents that are supposed to be for the public records. What is so difficult about coming out with it from 13 or the regional or the constituency collation forms, something that was declared at the constituency level, and say that these are our documents, so that our lawyers and our team will inspect and verify? And the court dismissed this? KOD. All I can say is that the petition before the Supreme Court, for me, is a litmus test for our judiciary. Prior to this case, when the ANAS investigation, even before ANAS came out with the infamous goat and yam investigation that revealed that some judges took bribes, yam in the form of yams, goats, monies, and other things to influence judgment, to manipulate judgment, and they were not serving justice and dispense justice as it ought to be. Many people in Ghana are skeptical about the credibility of our judicial system.
Yeah.
So, like I'm saying, many people have. So it's a perception. That's what I was trying to say. That people perceive that then it is possible
on the basis of the analysis investigation.
That's what I'm basing it on analysis investigation.
You are not saying that because of analysis investigation, you are coming to the conclusion that these decisions have been made because the judges have been influenced.
No, I don't think that's what you're saying.
So you need to make that.
So that's what I'm saying, that it has become a litmus test for the judiciary to hold itself, okay, in such a state that the judgments that they give and the conduct of the judiciary should help us to increase that confidence of the people in the judiciary. So for me, a matter as simple as a request for original documents, I was actually surprised. I'm not surprised that Professor Azan, a seasoned lawyer, is asking the Supreme Court to revise its decision. And if it is possible, I think that is something that they ought to do. Another trend I have observed is that in many cases that you may have read about, judgments given at the Supreme Court, you usually see dissenting views. Either 5-4, 6-3, 6-1, and all of that. But quite strangely, in this particular election petition hearing that is ongoing.
You mean the applications, not the hearing, because the case has not ended. The applications that have been made, or the motions that have been...
So the election petition hearing is ongoing.
It's ongoing, yes.
In almost all the applications and the judgments that have been given, the decisions that have been taken so far,
yes, you can comment on
are all seeking to, you see all of them have been
ruled in a certain way.
Ruled in a certain way, 7-0 and all of that. I think that we ought to do a lot to strengthen our judiciary, and we are asking that the judges stay true to the cause of giving justice to the people of Ghana. Okay,
thank you very much. And let me also remind you that the fact that you've seen in previous rulings that the judgment has gone a certain way does not necessarily mean that all the judges must also rule in that light. So if it is 9-0, then that is what the judges think it should be. So I think that you should also acknowledge that.
I acknowledge, but my point is that it's rather strangely, I think 6 applications that have been dismissed. All of them seems to be towing the same line.
Okay, so Elvis, let me come to you now.
From the outset of my conversation on this topic, let me make it emphatic that my comments are mine and are not to be intended on the integrity of the court whatsoever. I believe that there is a petition before court to, as it were, make a determination as to whether or not the petitioner's claims stand the test of legal scrutiny. It is only the court that have the basis to be able to do so in complying with the rules of court, which are mutually agreed by counsels at the bar and judges at the bench. That fundamental and elementary principle of justice has been complied with, and that must be noted. It is a court of law, and so counsels are at liberty that at the latitude of court be able to enter applications for considerations on specific matters. I do not think that the court is oblivious of the fact that such applications must be, verified and scrutinized against the domain of the section of law from which the argument emanates. That's fact. And I'm not speaking for the court either. People in legal academia and in the practice of law, and of course social observers, will have their opinions, because even at the end of the day, the verdicts of court are an opinion. Just that they are made on the basis of law that may be different from what ordinary men like you and I will make. But if you look at the sparks in the fire, yes, it is heartbreaking, it is disheartening that consistently 4 applications or more seem not to have gone in the interest of the petitioners. Okay, it only calls for them to revise the approach to which their applications and the concerns therein are raised before the court in a manner that may convince the bench than the apparent conviction on all the instances. I take the last one, I think in yesterday's situation. If you look at the manner in which the application was even read, and just listening to the preliminary views of it, I was a bit afraid. You see, you have some knowledge of law, and you know that the court is a court of evidence and facts. Counsel for petitioner did not, I heard them making adducing cases of the fact that it was just to verify the documents. Once it is in the law court, such documents becomes sources of critical evidence. They fail then at that point to be public. That is number one. Number two, in the application sent by the petitioner, they did not question the authenticity of the data of the EC in terms of the pink sheets. And I'm speaking this one because already ruling has been done on the application, so it cannot be prejudicial.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Now, if you are conversant with Act 323, that is the Evidence Act of Ghana, specifically Section 166 is of the fact that where the authenticity of a the original document to be tendered in evidence is not questioned, where the authenticity of the document is not questioned, the photocopy, carbon copy, or any rightful duplicate is admissible in evidence of equal weight just as the original document. So I want to believe that if counsel for petitioner's application had initially from the outset questioned or attacked the authenticity or cast doubt in the fact that the original document varies from the duplicates they have, and that verdict on the election or declaration was not on the basis of the duplicates they had, but on what they now hold as originals, which varies from the duplicates their agents had. I am believing that the court may have granted say. Because in the CI, which has a direct link with this matter, the CI, which has a direct link with this matter, in Order 29, Rule 11 specifically, actually spoke to this matter. And one other deficiency of the application is the fact that they had actually the first 21 days of hearing to have actually looked at some of these things because they are foreseeable in law. And if they verify that some of these issues would arise, it is optionable to see to have been able to enter an application to, as it were, audit the originality of the documents. None of these were done. I want to believe that it most likely was the basis for which the kind of decision we saw happen. So in law, it is not only a court of logic. So drawing in right to information bills and the fact that there are difficulties, at the instance of law, Eden, they are not the same. And that education must be made clear. I want to think that applications before court. It is vetted, okay, against the background of the if you are making your argument on the basis of precedence. You remember that counsel read a particular judgment on similar matter that was made in the judicial notices of, I think, Justice Adinyira in the previous cases. That case was established. But you realize that it was argued against the background of the ratio descendi. That is the rationale for the decision there is in that verdict, which did not carry equal evidential basis and legal parameters as the application that was before the court. So the ADC must look at that critically going forward.
Thank you. Please.
We should cut all the long English. The law must make sense. Judgments of our court must make sense. What are we talking about? We are saying that today, a document which to all intents and purposes is a public document by definition, by nature and everything. A document that the law requires should be made public. A document in the possession of public officers has become a secret document by virtue of the Supreme Court decision. This is a country which is struggling to give meaning to an enactment, the so-called Freedom of Information Act. How do you combine the two? If indeed this document is the same as the documents available to agents of the political parties, why do you prevent them from getting it? The argument is that, oh, you have duplicates of that. You haven't shown that the duplicate is defective and so on. So if it's the same, why prevent them? I am in full agreement with Professor Sari and all the legal minds who have commented on this issue. I don't understand it. It's completely baffling. Look, if the EC itself were to come forward and say, these are the documents that we use in the declaration of the result, it's available for public scrutiny, anybody can have it and so on. Wouldn't that enhance the credibility of the EC? What is this?
Well, so I think, yeah. On 18th of December 2020, there was a release like that. There was a press release from the EC indicating that the election data is safe and will be preserved. The last paragraph says, we reassure the general public that all data generated before, during, and after the election has been preserved and will be made available to any interested party in a transparent manner when requested through the laid down process. So this is also here. Yeah. So this was 18th of December.
Where the defection is, as I made in my analysis.
My brother.
Application that can be superior to an application to the Supreme Court.
I've far exceeded my time. With the grace of respect, I've far exceeded my time. Thank you, Edem Agbana, for your time this morning. Thank you, Elvis Buta. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Thank you for watching today's edition of Good Morning Africa. My name is Kwame Owusu. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Do have a very pleasant day. Bye-bye.